Hey fam, you're watching the HrizzyB Show. I got a different format today. So much news to talk about. We got people freaking out about the Tucker Carlson and Putin interview, all the wild news around the council report on the Biden mishandling of the classified documents, the Supreme Court weighing in on the 2024 election, and Nikki Haley calls the Nevada race a scam rigged for Trump. Relax and enjoy the ride. Hit that like button. Let YouTube know that you approve. And let's just jump right into it, starting with the Tucker Carlson interview with Putin. Russian President Vladimir Putin conducted an extensive interview lasting over 2 hours with former Fox News anchor Tucker Carlson, which was made available online on Thursday night. The discussion spanned numerous subjects, including Ukraine and the Russian economy. Yet, it felt a little light on the substance. Putin admitted to Carlson that Russia has yet to meet its objective in the criticized invasion of Ukraine.
Did you call a U.S. President, Secretary of State and say, if you keep militarizing Ukraine with NATO forces, this is going to be we're going to act?
We talked about this all the time. We addressed the United States and European countries' leadership to stop these developments immediately, to implement the Minsk agreements. Nobody wanted that. Everybody wanted to resolve the issue by military force only, but we could not let that happen. And the situation got to the point when the Ukrainian side announced, no, we will not do anything. They also started preparing for military action. It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this war. And we did not start this war in 2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
Do you think you've stopped it now? I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. As soon as we pulled back our troops from Kiev, our Ukrainian negotiators immediately threw all our agreements reached in Istanbul into the and got prepared for a long-standing armed confrontation with the help of the United States and its satellites in Europe. That is how the situation has developed, and that is how it looks now.
Launching the interview with an almost 20-minute monologue on history touching an era of the Empress Catherine the Great, which Tucker responded to with,
So if you don't mind, I will take only 30 seconds or 1 minute to give you a short reference to history for giving you a little historical background.
Please.
Let's look where our relationship with Ukraine started from. Where did Ukraine come from? Of the Russian state in 862. In 1862, Russia celebrated the 1000th anniversary of its statehood, the 1000th anniversary of the country. In 882, Prince Oleg, who was actually playing the role of regent at Rurik's young. The next very significant date in the history of Russia was 988. This was the baptism of Russia, when Prince Vladimir, after the 1917 revolution, the southern part of Russian lands, including Kiev, a few years later another union was signed. They wrote letters to Warsaw demanding that their rights be observed and people be commissioned here, including to Kiev.
I beg your pardon, can you tell us what period? I'm losing track of where in history we are.
It was in the 13th century. Now I will tell you what happened later and give the dates so that there is no confusion. And in 1654, even a bit earlier, so that you don't think that I'm inventing things, I'll give you these documents.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're inventing it. I'm not sure why it's relevant to what happened.
Of course, Putin used this lengthy historical narrative to argue that Russia and Ukraine have deep-rooted historical ties that justify their union. 2 hours into the interview, Tucker inquired about the American journalist detained in Russia on espionage charges while reporting. Tucker proposed that Putin could release Evan to him, implying a potential diplomatic gesture.
Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter, he's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
However, in theory, we can say that we do not rule out that we can do that if our partners take reciprocal steps. When I talk about the partners, I first of all refer to special services. Special services are in contact with one another. They are talking about the matter in question. There is no taboo to settle this issue. We are willing to solve it. But there are certain terms being discussed via special services channels. I believe an agreement can be reached.
Putin responded with what appeared to be an indication of his terms, referencing a Russian patriot who had dealt with a bandit in a European city, which aligns with the speculation that Russia seeks a prisoner exchange involving Vadim Kraskov. A lot of folks stateside are calling this interview a total snooze fest. Hillary Clinton, she didn't mince words, straight up called Tucker Carlson a useful idiot for sitting down with Putin.
Tucker Carlson is in Moscow right now interviewing Vladimir Putin.
Right.
The first American, I'll say, journalist to interview Putin since the war in Ukraine began. What does that tell you about Tucker Carlson and right-wing media and also Vladimir Putin?
Well, it shows me what I think we've all known. He's what's called a useful idiot. I mean, if you actually read translations of what's being said on Russian media, they make fun of him. He says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview, because through him, he can, continue to lie about what his, objectives are in Ukraine and what he expects to see happen. I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with a Russian outlet, because he is a useful idiot.
Biden report. The report on whether Biden mishandled classified documents has concluded that no criminal charges are warranted, despite the investigation uncovering evidence of Biden retaining and disclosing classified materials post-vice presidency. Essentially, despite the serious nature of these findings, the decision not to charge Biden hinges on a mix of technicalities and perhaps a dash of sympathy for an elderly gentleman who just has memory issues. If you think I'm joking, just read the executive summary of this 300-page report. No charges because Biden cooperated with the investigation and he has memory issues. So it was more likely that he had forgot about the classified documents. I know. What about Trump? Well, the report gives its justification on how this case is different from Trump's. And it goes on to pretty much say, historically, many former presidents and vice presidents have taken national security materials without facing criminal charges. This pattern establishes a precedent suggesting that such actions by themselves have not been deemed prosecutable offenses for former high-ranking officials. The report goes to say, however, the case of Mr. Trump is a notable exception, marking a departure from this historical norm. The key differences, according to the report, between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump's situation lie in their responses to the allegations of mishandling classified documents. Mr. Trump, unlike Mr. Biden, faced charges that, according to the indictment, included serious aggravating factors. After being given opportunities to return classified documents, Mr. Trump allegedly refused to do so for many months and engaged in obstructive actions, including enlisting others to destroy evidence and to lie about it. In contrast, Mr. Biden's actions, as outlined in the report, showed a willingness to cooperate with the investigation. He promptly turned in classified documents to the appropriate authorities, consented to searches of his properties, participated voluntarily in interviews, and generally facilitated the inquiry process. This cooperative stance, combined with the historical context of how similar cases have been treated, led to the conclusion that the factors do not support prosecution of Mr. Biden. Of course, the White House was not happy about the implications made in the report about Biden's memory issues. During his brief address to the nation Thursday night, Biden, who's 81, defended himself.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that?
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president, and I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's
Your memory has gotten worse, Mr.
No,
President?
my memory is not good. My memory is fine. My memory, take a look at what I've done since I become president. None of you thought I could pass any of the things I got passed. How'd that happen? You know, I guess I just forgot what was going on.
Mr. President.
Voters have concerns about your age. How are you going to assuage them? And do you fear that this report is only going to fuel further concerns about your age?
Only by some of you.
They express concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
Because I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
He brought up the Israel-Hamas war and said he worked with the president of Mexico to help send aid to the war zone.
I'm of the view, as you know, that the conduct of the response in the Gaza Strip has been over the top. I think that, as you know, initially the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side.
On Trump, it looks like the court is gearing up to overturn the ban, and frankly, I see why some are calling this a slam dunk for Trump. The justices' questions during the oral arguments really caught my attention. They seem genuinely skeptical of the idea that a state has the authority to exclude federal candidates from the ballot.
I would expect that a goodly number of states will say, whoever the Democratic candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others, for the Republican candidate, you're off the ballot, and it'll come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence.
Well, certainly, Your Honor, the fact that there are potential frivolous applications of a constitutional provision isn't a reason.
Well, no, hold on. I mean, you might think they're frivolous, but probably the people who are bringing them may not think they're frivolous. Insurrection is a broad term, and if there's some debate about it, I suppose that will go into the decision, and then eventually what we would be deciding whether there was an insurrection when one president did something as opposed to when somebody else did something else. And what do? Do we wait until near the time of counting the ballots and sort of go through which states are valid and which states aren't?
Most boldly, I think that the question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States. In other words, this question of whether a former president is disqualified for insurrection to be president again is, just say it. It sounds awfully national to me.
I'm a skeptic as well. The notion that states could pick and choose candidates based on the constitutional clause seems like a slippery slope. What's a state doing deciding who other citizens get to vote for president? It really rings true. It underscores a fundamental principle of our democracy, voters' choice. If the courts overturn the ban, it'll send a message to all the states to really check themselves. On Nikki Haley got roasted for her embarrassing performance in the Nevada primary. She had this to say:
You go into Iowa, you came in third place. You go into New Hampshire, you lost by double digits. In Nevada, you none of the above, basically, or not one of these candidates, at least in the primary, and you're not going to take part in the caucus tonight, which I don't know why you didn't do that. In your home state of South Carolina, Donald Trump is leading 60 to 29.3%.
I appreciate you asking that. I'll tell you, it's interesting because in Iowa, they were all saying, she's never going to make it through Iowa. We started at 2%. We ended with 20%. That was no small feat when we got rid of a dozen of the candidates. Then you go into New Hampshire, we got 43% of the vote. But what's more important, Sean, is you have to acknowledge the Republican incumbent did not get 43% of the vote. That's alarm bells. We were told months ago that this was a sham. The GOP chair, he's under indictment. He worked with Trump. They created these caucuses. It's written about in news reports. You can look it up on the internet. They planned this thing in the caucus. They said that we had to pay $55,000 if we wanted to be in the caucus with Trump. And so, Nevada didn't mean anything. South Carolina, we're going to work it hard. We're going to bring it in. But I'm telling you, we better pay attention. Look at what we lost. You've got Trump paying $50 million in legal fees from his campaign donation. negotiations. You've got an RNC that's broke. How do you beat Biden with that? You can't. We have got to have a new generational leader if we're going to move forward. This is not personal about Trump.
She's saying the contest is rigged for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who was not on the ballot Tuesday, but will be awarded all 26 state delegates.